Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. In this video, I'm going to be giving my opinions on the first round picks in the 2025 NFL draft and whether I thought they were a good pick or not so great or just bad in general. So for the first pick, the Tennessee Titans selected Cam Ward. Now, I personally think this was a good pick due to the fact that I thought that Will Levis hasn't been very good, and I generally do think that a quarterback was one of their definitely urgent needs. Cam Ward's a good quarterback, probably the best quarterback in the draft. Definitely not the best player in the draft. However, I think the Titans definitely need a quarterback, and Cam Ward was easily seen as a first round pick. So yeah, it's a good pick. They needed a quarterback, and yeah, nothing else much else to say. For the second pick, the Jacksonville Jaguars traded up to get a Travis Hunter. I think this is another great pick. The Jaguars needed both a receiver and a cornerback, and if Travis Hunter can play both the positions, then they've got a great deal there. Um, Travis Hunter would probably most likely would have been taken by the Browns, so I guess the Jaguars did desperately seem like they needed him. But yeah, this pick makes sense. I can't hate it. Travis Hunter is obviously seen as the best player in the draft, won the Heisman. So honestly, this out of most picks, it just makes sense. For the third pick, the New York Giants selected Abdul Carter. Another one makes sense. Carter's a great player, one of the best players in this draft. So overall, this was another pick. It was just a no-brainer. Made sense. They needed to make sure to work on the defensive line, work in a lot of areas specifically, but it's a good idea to get a great player. So yeah, they've done the right thing there. For pick number 4, the Patriots selected Will Campbell. This is another obviously good pick. I mean, Will Campbell, another one of the best players in this draft, and the Patriots need to sort out their offensive line, so this pick made sense. Hopefully, it will strengthen their O line more, especially to give Drake May more of a chance. But honestly, this pick it just made sense. It's another one of them that's just a no-brainer. For the fifth pick in the NFL draft, the Cleveland Browns selected Mason Graham, another one that just makes sense. The Browns have a lot of areas that they need to improve. However, defensive line was definitely one of them. I think, considering the fact this draft has a lot of great offensive and defensive linemen, this is another pick that just makes sense. You need to win the most, try and get some of the best players, and obviously because they didn't have the second pick because they traded it with the Jaguars. It's a pick that's just another one that just kind of made sense. For the sixth pick in the NFL draft, the Raiders selected Ashton Jeanty, another pick. I mean, I know I keep saying yet another pick that makes sense, but obviously the Raiders needed a running back. Jeanty is the best running back in this class, amazing player. This was another, it just makes sense. For the seventh pick, the Jets selected Armand Membu. Another pick, it makes sense. I mean, the Jets definitely need to improve their O-line, and they've got a guy who definitely can do that for them. I mean, it's another simple one, the offensive line, defensive linemen in this draft are pretty good. So I definitely think, all teams are going to make the most of it, and it just makes sense. For the eighth pick in the NFL draft, the Panthers have selected Terrell McMillan. For me, I know a lot of Panthers fans aren't happy, as I think a lot of them wanted Jalen Walker, which is fair. Jalen Walker's a great player. However, I always didn't think the Panthers are the best receiver room. So to me, this makes sense. McMillan's maybe arguably the best receiver. I know people are saying Travis Hunter is, which I guess is fair. However, I think McMillan is, definitely as one of the best. This just another bit that makes sense. They need a receiver. In my opinion, anyway, they definitely need to make the receiver room better. So yeah, to me, it's just another pick. I want to say it's no brainer. Even though I know a lot of people are probably not as especially Panthers fans might be quite mixed about this. However, I don't think it's a bad pick, but maybe that's just my opinion. The ninth pick in the NFL draft, New Orleans Saints take Calvin Vance Jr. I mean, another offensive lineman. The Saints, I mean, they definitely need to improve their offensive line. Obviously, now I think the Saints is quite different because this is after the draft now, and a lot of things have changed with the Saints. But they definitely need to improve their offensive line. So I don't really hate this pick either. Offensive line, matters a lot, and I think a lot of teams are making the most of it to try and use this in the draft where the quarterbacks aren't seen as kind of the major thing, this year. So yeah, I mean, it's another great pick. For the 10th pick in the NFL draft, the Chicago Bears selected Colson Loveland. Now, this is an interesting one because I didn't really know what I'd expect the Bears to run for, but I did, Titan was definitely thinking, even though they've already got Cole, at least I think they still got Cole Kmet. Um, it's a bit of an interesting one. This, I mean, I guess Loveland could play as a tight end here, but I'll admit, I think a lot of people saw this as that Tyler Warren would have been picked first as the first tight end. Because a lot of people had Loveland or Warren going to the Colts realistically. However, I don't think people expected Loveland to go maybe as early as he did. But it's not wrong. He's a great tight end. He was easily top two as one of the tight ends along with Warren. And honestly, it's not a bad pick. And yeah, you can't argue with it. The Bears definitely improving their offense. So you can't hate on it. In the 11th pick of the NFL draft, the 49ers selected Mikael Williams. I mean, makes sense. I mean, the 49ers are a great team already, but, I definitely think, make sure to work on the defense to make sure it's as good as it can be. There's another pick that just seems to make sense. I think, especially in this draft, a lot of teams seem to kind of know what they needed, so it didn't seem too bad. There weren't in my opinion, anyway, there weren't too many unexpected choices. I think in general in this draft, a lot of people are unsure who would have been picked. So I mean, it's another pick. It makes sense. Pick number 12, the Dallas Cowboys selected Tyler Booker. So obviously he's a guard, which the Cowboys definitely needed after Zach Martin retired. I mean, it's another, it makes a lot of sense. This is a pick that, another good one. He's a good player. And honestly, it's just a good pick. They needs to improve their offensive line because of the fact that losing Zach Martin Zach Martin is one of the best players and was one of the best players on the Cowboys. So I definitely think that, it just makes sense. It's a great pick. At pick number 13, the Miami Dolphins selected Kenneth Grant. I mean, it's another good one to get. I mean, the Dolphins, I think did need to start, had a few areas of improvement, and defensive line, I guess, was one of them. I mean, Kenneth Grant definitely on some of the better players in this draft. Yeah, it's another one. It's a very simple one. It's one I can't really say much about because it's just overall in general not a bad pick. It just makes sense for them. So yeah, this is another one where I think I can say it's a good pick. Pick number 14, the Colts selected Tyler Warren. I mean, this was one that was kind of felt like it was either going to happen or it wasn't. I will admit though, Loveland going before Warren was an interesting one. Obviously Tyler Warren, he was either going to the Colts or he wasn't. It was kind of like that. It was like either he was going to get picked slightly before or he wasn't, and getting picked by the Colts, which made sense. Colts need a tight end, definitely. So yeah, is another pick. Makes sense. One's a great player, so yeah. It's just overall, like I said, it's another pick that just makes sense for some of these teams. At pick number 15, the Atlanta Falcons selected Jalen Walker. Obviously, I think this guy was obviously going to be first round. I think obviously Panthers fans wanted him, which is, it happens. Now the Falcons definitely need to, slightly, do some improvements to their defense. I mean, they've got pretty good, some pretty good defensive players in general, but it's always good to improve. So in general, it's not that pick at all whatsoever. I don't know too much how I feel about it, but it makes sense. The Falcons had a good draft, and this was another, one way to show it. At pick number 16, the Cardinals selected Walter Nolan. This is one I'm not too sure about, but like I said, the Cardinals definitely need to improve their defensive line. So it's a pick that I see and it makes sense. Cardinals had a pretty decent defense, but definitely needed ways to improve it. So yeah, I can't really hate this pick at all. It just totally fits, what they were looking for. So yeah, it just makes sense. At pick number 17, the Bengals selected Shamar Stewart. This is another kind of one I look at and say it makes sense. Bengals very much needed to improve their defense, especially with, a few of their players have gone and the contract extensions for some of their offensive players. Jamal Stewart's like a great choice and definitely needs to improve a lot of areas. So overall in general, it makes total sense. It does. And I know I've said that a lot. A lot of these picks, a lot of these teams, they kind of know who they're looking for. And this was another pick. It was just no brainer. Pick number 18, the Seahawks selected Corey Zabel. Now, I'm a Seahawks fan, so to me, this just makes a lot of sense. I mean, we need to massively improve offensive line due to that. It was just a massive issue last season. So as a Seahawks fan, I think this is a great pick. I think we personally had a great draft. So honestly, it's great to see offensive lineman can pick this draft. He can play multiple positions, so I will very much hope that'll be a good thing because it will hopefully improve our team a lot more with just a better offensive line and hopefully for Sam Darnold as well. So yeah, I'm generally happy with this pick. I can't complain at all. At pick number 19, the Buccaneers selected Mika Egbuka. Sorry, I probably absolutely out loud butchered that definitely. Um, Now, this is an interesting one. I was going to say it's a good pick. I mean, he's a good player. But I think it's one of them that I think a lot of people are mixed about. And I think the reason why is because the Buccaneers already have two great wide receivers. They have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, who are both great receivers. However, I think the one reason why I don't mind this pick as much is just because Mike Evans is quite old now. He's played 10 or 11 seasons in the NFL now. And, he's a great player. But obviously, he's getting older age now, and I think he could definitely mentor a younger receiver now. So this pick actually makes quite a lot of sense. An older good receiver, teaching a younger one who could become a star. It makes sense. I don't really hate this pick. I think honestly, it makes a lot of sense long term wise. At pick 20, the Denver Broncos select Jahadi Barron. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not too knowledgeable about this pick, obviously, because the Broncos have probably got the best cornerback in the league, well, currently at the moment, for what we know, which is Pat Surtain. So this is an interesting choice. I know Jahadi Barron's one of the best cornerbacks in this, draft. 21st pick, the picks was Steelers select Eric Harmon. That's an interesting one. A lot of people we expected Steelers to take like a quarterback in the moment they could, but clearly they weren't going to. So they selected Derek Harmon, who doesn't seem like a bad pick. I'm going to assume he's like an interior defensive lineman, which will be interesting. I don't know if he'll play next to Hayward or sort of kind of that way. But I don't think it's a bad pick. The Steelers sort of. I'll be honest, the Steelers were a bit of a team where I could not really tell you much or where they need to improve. But to be fair, if they needed a defensive tackle, it's not necessarily a bad pick. 22nd pick, the Chargers select Omarion Hampton. Now, the Chargers, I know they got Najee Harris, even though I think it's 1 year, so getting Hampton made sense. I mean, Harris is a decent running back, but he's not the best, so Hampton's probably, a good choice for that. Hopefully, obviously, he's probably seen as the second best running back in his class, with Austin Gentry being the best. So this isn't necessarily a bad pick, he was always going to get picked a lot lower, but like I said, the Chargers definitely need, long-term running back, and I hope this will be the right choice. In the 23rd pick, the Green Bay Packers select Matthew Golden. Now, this is another one that just makes sense. In my opinion, the Packers didn't have a great receiver room, so hopefully Matthew Golden will help improve this the receiver room. Now, even though Green Bay they play well most years anyway, their receiver room definitely seems a lot weaker than a lot of other teams. Well, it is weaker than a lot of other teams. So hopefully, them getting Golden will hopefully improve their receiving class, by a lot. So hopefully this will be a good pick. And like I said, it makes sense. This was an area where they need to improve in, so it's not a bad pick at all. In the 24th pick, the Minnesota Vikings selected Donovan Jackson. Don't know much about this guy, however, I do think the Vikings definitely might need to improve their offensive line. So another pick, mate, it's just a good pick in general. I think, like I said, this draft saw a lot of good offensive line and defensive linemen, so I think a lot of teams are making the most of that. So I can't really hate this pick. I think it's honestly another good pick. So yeah. For the 25th pick, the New York Giants selected Jackson Dart. Obviously, the Giants, I think they traded for this pick. Now Jackson Dart's an interesting one because I would have thought the Giants we're going to take a quarterback for a lot later, due to the fact that they got both Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, and I know they're both quite old quarterbacks, so they were definitely probably going to a younger one. However, I didn't think they would get that Jackson Dart like just straight in the first round like that. However, it's not necessarily a bad pick. Dart's one of the best quarterbacks in this draft. and it does seem like he could do well for them. So I don't actually think this is a bad pick. I know a lot of people know about Shadow Sanders being drafted really late, and I don't understand that. I don't think he should have been. I generally do think he could have probably should have been drafted in the first round. At least now that I look at it, maybe by the Saints due to Derek Carr retiring now. However, that was not the case before the draft. So yeah, it's another pick where I guess it makes sense. However, I don't think it's an amazing pick. However, I don't actually think it's a bad pick. I just think maybe the Giants didn't really need to trade up to get a pick, but it's not necessarily a bad one. The 26th pick, the Atlanta Falcons selected James Pierce Jr. Another one makes quite a bit of sense. Need to work on the defensive line quite a bit because I think that's one of their weaker areas. So another pick makes sense. It's not necessarily a bad pick, to be honest. It just is. It's one that I don't feel too much for. However, like a lot of people said, the Falcons are definitely probably had one of the better drafts compared to other teams. So I think in general, it's not necessarily. It's a pretty good pick. It's not bad, and it's an area they need to work on. So yeah. For the 27th pick, the Baltimore Ravens selected Matthew Starks. I mean, this is a good pick, a very good pick. I think, honestly, surprised he didn't go early because I think a lot of draft boards had him, like a lot of predictions had him going a lot earlier. So I think he's definitely gone maybe a bit later than he should have. However, it's a good pick. The Ravens picked a good player, so I'm not sure if he's going to play as like a free safety because because they've already got Hamilton, who's probably one of the one of the best safeties. So it's another good pick though, because Starks. I think a lot of people expect him to go a lot lower than he did. So a lot early. I mean, a lot earlier. So I generally don't think this is a bad pick at all whatsoever. He's a good player. Not sure. Yeah, well, I generally think he'll do well for the Ravens, hopefully. So yeah, not necessarily a bad pick at all. For the 28th pick, the Detroit Lions selected Tyleik Williams. This is a pick that also makes quite a bit of sense. The Lions have a great team already, both offensive and defensive wise. But this is another pick where it's kind of just sort of makes sense. Maybe definitely need to work on the defensive line. So then they've done that. So yeah, it's another pick. It makes a lot of sense. So yeah. For the 29th pick in the NFL draft, the Washington Commanders selected Josh Connolly Jr. Working on the defensive line. This is good for the Commanders, honestly, because they've got Tunsil now, and they've got another player added. So honestly, it's good. Hopefully this will help improve and maybe even make it better for them. The next season they were very good last season, especially for Jaden Daniels. So honestly, this could be a very good thing for the Commanders. Honestly, working more on the offensive line, honestly, it could end up being even better for them. So yeah, this is another pick that it makes sense. For the 30th pick in the NFL draft, the Buffalo Bills selected Maxwell Hairston. Now this is one that I want to say makes sense. However, I think a lot of people would have expected Will Johnson to at least gone in the first round, despite maybe injury. I think the injury is what put teams off from getting him. So this one's interesting. Hairston, I know he's one of the better cornerbacks. However, I don't think many people had him to go in the first round. So I don't necessarily hate this because I definitely think the Bills need to improve their defense slightly. So I don't necessarily think this is a bad pick, but I don't actually love it because, like I said, a lot of times I didn't see Hairston really mentioned to go in the first round. So yeah, this is one I'm a bit mixed about. For the 31st pick in the NFL draft, the Philadelphia Eagles selected Jared Campbell. Now this was one that I think is a very good pick because I'm surprised he didn't get taken sooner or earlier. So the Eagles have picked up a great player, and gone good playing. Eagles have got a great team already. They won the Super Bowl. I mean, this is a pick that could be very good for them. Honestly, their defense is very good. They've lost a few key players in their defense. However, I think they could definitely still remain on the same level they were before. They got a great team with great players. So honestly, it's not a bad pick whatsoever. It's a great pick. For the 32nd pick in the NFL draft, the Kansas City Chiefs selected Josh Simmons. Well, the Chiefs definitely, I think, I want to say they need to improve the defensive line just because I think they've lost, they've lost Joe Thuney, who was a great player for them. So honestly, offensive line is something that definitely matters to them a lot. It's not. It's another pick. It makes sense. Offensive lines are very strong in this draft. So I guess you've got to make the most of it. And the Chiefs have done that very much. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, make sure to subscribe, and hit the notification bell for any future videos. And thanks for watching for this video. I may do one on round 2 or on the round 3 draft as well, depending if anyone wants to see that. And I'll see you in the next video. Thank you. Goodbye.